Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. Today, I am joined all the way from the bright lights of Austin in Texas. Drea Burbank, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The privilege is really all mine. So, guys, this is part of a new series that I'm covering called Built in California. As you all know, I've recently arrived in the States. And I'm trying to make a difference, a positive difference to the startup community around the world, but more specifically, trying to figure out like what the hell's going on in the ground here. So many of you know I'm from South Africa, and now I'm here in the big bright lights of America, and we're going to be shining some light on the amazing, incredible people that are really changing the world, not only through technology, but through startups as well. So, Drea, you're in the hot seat today. So here we go. So, Drea, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? What's the backstory here? Kick us off. What do we need to know?
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Savimbo. We do fair trade carbon credits. So indigenous farmers in the Colombian Amazon plant trees, and we sell those credits to multinational corporate entities. We track the credits with blockchain, no middlemen, but all credits are retired at the end.
Amazing. And so, walk us through the backstory to this, because obviously you're like super smart. I had the privilege of chatting to you off air. Trust me, when the CPU cycles are going at like 10x what you do, it's like, oh my God, like let's have a conversation, please. But what's the backstory there? Like, why does this matter to you, this problem?
Oh, I'm obsessed with this. Well, first off, I'm a total nerd. My investor told me last week, he's like, you go full nerd real quick. And he said it like a bad thing, but I was like, yeah, and so yeah, I grew up off the grid in central Idaho. I did 9 years fighting forest fires. Then I became a doctor. And unlike all of my amazing compadres in med school, I took a beeline for high tech right out of graduation. And we started a consulting agency for high IQ individuals to solve hard scientific and social problems using emerging technologies.
Right. Okay. So you are a rocket scientist. Okay. No, that's kind of what I thought. So
I'm not, but I literally have a rocket scientist as an intern right now. He's just been upgraded and promoted to the intern. So he wants a capital T by his name, but
okay.
more on
Well,
that later.
more on that later. Yes, yes. That's the meat and the potatoes section. This is still the hors d'oeuvre. Uh, so, walk us through the problem here. So, obviously, you and I know, and probably a lot of people do. There was that last week Tonight Show covering this idea of carbon credits and painting a picture of like how this isn't actually making a difference to sustainability, if you like. So, how bad is this problem? How big is it? Walk us through how you would characterize the problem that you guys are solving.
Yeah, I would say as somebody who's been in high tech for a long time and I see a big problem, I also see an opportunity. I'm like, great, what do we have to hack that? John Oliver did a good job of elucidating problems in the market. I would say as a comedian, his market share is more problems and solutions. And if you watch the episode, it's problem, 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 problem. And we really, as a species, can't just watch the whole world burn. We kind of have to do something about it. We're definitely at a tipping point, not only in the Amazon, but also with climate change. You could debate endlessly as a scientist, like where climate change came from, but I think it all comes down to we know that the carbon emissions are skyrocketing. So there's a lot of smart people working on the problem, and a lot of governments have gotten involved. There's like 198 countries that all agree to lower global temperatures. But the question is then, how do you do it? And I think that's a more productive question. How do you do it? So that's the problem we're working on.
So, so how do you do it? Because it seems to me like there's a lot of lip service currently from the private sector around sustainability. You know, like we've offset our, I don't know, carbon footprint by X. And we hope by 2023 to or 2025 to be like this or totally negative or carbon neutral or whatever the case is. Is there lip service from the private sector here? Walk us through
Yeah.
that.
You can't lower, it turns out you can't lower global temperatures with a press release. Breaking news. Um, you have to actually pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And there are some tried and true technologies to do that. I think as a species, we tend to look, we're like, what's the newest machine or technology that will do it? And the truth is, it's very old. It's about 20 million years old. It's trees and plants. So algae and trees are the best capable of pulling carbon out of the atmosphere in the parts per million it's in right now. So in other words, it's very diluted. And the only species on our planet that can do that are like algae and trees. There is other methods. There's this thing called biochar where you like burn kind of the outside of organic material. You're basically like electronically making early coal, and you put it back on the ground. It works like a fertilizer. So those are kind of the three methods that we know work.
Right. So let's talk about Savimbo. So firstly, what does Savimbo mean as a name?
Oh, I love this. My one of my consultants is a street kid from Uganda, and he can also play any instrument known to man. Like he's definitely a genius. And about 5 years ago, he came to me and was like, "I want to start a clothing store named Savimbo." And he still won't tell me what it means, but I googled it, and I think it means trust in Kenyan, but I'm still trying to figure it out. Anyway, he decided not to start the clothing store, so we had the name, and we thought, "Hey, it sounds Spanish, but nobody else is using it. We're going to use this." And it's been a fun name. Everybody likes it.
So, well, I like it. I think it's an interesting name, very African, and I think this is quite an important point now where we're going to double down into kind of like how you guys actually make a difference. So, so I'm on your website at the moment, guys. It's savimbo.com. Let me see if I can bring it up for everybody. But I want to talk about the. Sorry, I'm busy doing two things at once. You know what they say, men can't multitask.
Yes, but I have seen some ambulance dispatchers that definitely disprove that rule. So,
so cool. So I brought up your website for everybody. So it's fair trade carbon credits, and you pay subsistence farmers in tropical forests directly for the preservation and reforestation of their lands. Effective altruism. So walk us through that. Why does this matter, and how are you making a difference to these farmers?
yeah, I think the economic model is really interesting because if you think about it in the history of the world, the poorest billion people on the planet have really never had a viable crop to sell outside of local markets. Like you could take 5 mangoes to the local market and sell that. But if you lived outside of cell phone range, didn't have a digital identity, didn't have a bank account, you didn't have a lot of value. And for the first time in the history of the world, just curating the tree in your backyard is actually a value. And the question becomes, how do those people learn how to sell to a global market? And we took blockchain and applied it to that problem. So we had an emerging technology, an emerging market, and we just put them together. So we work directly with farmers. We have them get a bank account in the most stable banking structure they've got available to them. And then we pay into that bank account micropayments for land that they own.
So what does that payment infrastructure look like in the world of these farmers?
I was actually quite surprised. I thought that we would have to pay in cash, or or we would have to do in Africa they have phone minutes, which is a pretty common method of micropayment, but actually it ended up being pretty simple. We can just do an international wire transfer for less than $1, and they actually have access to banking in the city where they get farming supplies. So they just get it once a month and they're super happy.
So how does this work then? So you have a marketplace essentially where there's supply and then buy. So walk us through the marketplace process for Savimbo.
Yeah, we're a little unique in that our clients put a deposit on their credit before they're certified. And the deposit doesn't have a value until the credit's certified, because that's when the market gives it a value. And at that point, they have the right to purchase it. So with their deposit, they secure the right to purchase. And then at any point after that, they can purchase the whole credit at the market value and retire it. And it only makes sense if you're actually like an aluminum company who's trying to secure carbon credits, and your business model is never going to change from emissions. And so you have to pay somebody else to help you out. And in that case, it makes sense to talk to us because the demand is exceeding the supply in the carbon market. For the demand for good credits, not the John Oliver ones, which vaporize because they actually have no value. As the standards are tightening, credits like John Oliver described are just disappearing. If you invested in them or bought them, you have nothing at the end of the day. Credits like ours, where we have every single tree tracked on video and it was the farmer who did it, and the drone scans to prove it, those are in very, very low supply because they're hard to do.
Mm. So I've got your website up again. There's this guy. I always like actually show me someone, like do it for someone. Like walk me through this guy. It's on your website. His name is Johnny Jaguar, I believe.
Well, I said this is Johnny's Jaguar. This whole thing started with Johnny's Jaguar. I know this is a funny story, but it's actually like It's totally the truth. So Johnny, the deforestation was going into the Amazon until it reached Johnny's farm. And then he put his foot in the sand and he's like, not past my farm. So you actually can see the deforestation corridor all the way up to Johnny's farm. So for 10 years, Johnny doesn't get paid and he just protects the animals in his jungle. And he takes video of the animals. And then I meet him and he's like, we've interviewed 5 environmental organizations and you're the first one to actually put $1 into our account. So you're hired, and Johnny and his Jaguar are now working for us, or working with us. Actually, I think I'm working for him.
Yeah, that's a well said. That's
Yeah.
actually very well said, right? So it's all about this idea of service, which, by the way, comes up so much. Like, I don't think I've had any really successful founder or thought leader on the show if they don't really give a shit about their customer, in this case, Johnny, or other people like him. And to your point, I think the private sector, my view has historically been motivated by shareholders. And greed in many cases. So when the social condition starts to drive new behavior from the private sector, meaning, hey, I will buy a car like a Tesla because of the sustainability narrative that society dictates. And so now you have industrial businesses, GE, Ford, all these guys as an example, and then by extension, all the kinds of other companies who are now also trying to be cool for their customers to retain that shareholder value, right? And so this is the issue. It's the issue of like, well, are you really doing this, or are you just saying that you're doing it? Because I think it was the CEO of was it an airline? In America, it was
United Airlines on the John Oliver show. Yeah, he did a really good. He was honest. I really liked him.
Yeah, but that's it. He was like, "This is bullshit."
Yeah, and he was like, "It's hard. We don't know what to do." So I've talked to probably 50 different companies in the last month because, as a startup founder, you talk to your clients, and I talked to their ESG departments, and some of them are really doing a really good job, but they don't talk about it because they're worried about getting criticized. So internally, they might have an amazing ESG department. I think I talked to a transportation company like about a month ago, and they've been testing out an electric fleet, like start to finish for freight. And they've managed to make it equally lucrative as like a gas fleet, and they're deploying it. But I'd never heard about them on the media, like ever. So I was really surprised at that. I think every single person I've talked to, including like NASDAQs in, large developed nations, doesn't know what to do yet. And it's funny because every time I talk to my clients, they try and hire me as a consultant because they're like, you know what to do. I was like,
help us.
Yeah, people are confused, and I think that there is a large force in the market that's positively motivated and working really hard to like define standards. And standards are emerging, and they're not the ones that John Oliver critiqued. So
yeah, what are these standards that are emerging?
I want to say a really good thing towards the Science-Based Targets Initiative. It's a group of scientists, and companies can go to them and enroll in their program, and they'll help them get their emissions calculated. Because the big issue is like, what are you emitting? Most people don't know. A friend of mine does blockchain for oil and gas, Bobby Catoli. And so for large supply chains, trying to figure out where your emissions are from start to finish can be really hard. So that kind of tracking, if you deploy it, can give you good emissions calculations. I think from my end, from the provider side, like you can look at large organizations. Like I work with one who's a UN Red project in Papua New Guinea, and they're minting 2 million Vera certified units this year. And they did all the hard work. Like they went in and built infrastructure. They made sure that there was a trust for the kids. They were a logging company and just decided not to log and sell carbon credits instead. So that's like a great project. That's the Night company. So those are examples of like really good projects, but it's hard work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's not a press release.
No, it's not. And the hard thing about hard things is what makes what you're doing not only important for humanity, but also, from a commercial perspective. So you're in an incubator. You were talking to me. You're part of an incubator. You raise some money. I'd love for you to paint a picture of what has your experience been, because you're kind of like a little bit off center. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not a a fintech play where it's like, how much money do you want? You know, you're not a Salesforce plugin that creates a new pipeline for, you know, Salesforce resellers. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the standard stuff that you see in capitalistic markets like North America and California, etc. So you're a little bit off center. So what's the kind of experience been when you go, hey, we're going to be providing a marketplace, you know, that provides legit carbon credits and helps farmers, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. When you pitch that, and obviously you were successful at that, what has the attitude and kind of experience been from not only the incubator, but also, you know, investors?
I definitely pick my people. I think an investor told me last week that I was weird. And the more they asked, the more they were like, the closer I look, the weirder you get. And they were like, you'll never get money if you're weird. And I was like, you're basically saying I'm an innovation. Is that the same word here we're using? Most of the high tech community is innovating on a known play. So I was working in MENA. They only take proven models from the US, even Thailand, stuff like that. They take like Uber, Lyft, and they copy it for their country. That's a common innovation play. Even in the US, we see like, you know, Facebook goes to Twitter, goes to TikTok. Those are innovations on current ideas. If you talk to Peter Thiel and read his manifesto on the Future Foundation, he's saying, where's the fundamental change? Like, the money isn't in optimization. The money is in opening new markets and breaking new ground. And yeah, that's a hard place to be, but that's where we wanted to go. So we saw trends emerging overall in high tech, which is the trend towards digital banking and the ability to reach people. Everybody has a mobile phone. I'm in Colombia in the jungle, and the shaman has a mobile phone. Like, these guys have a lot more connectivity than they did previously. And the carbon market is an example of those trends. So when we see big trends kind of coalescing, that's when we look at novel markets. And this is just a new market that's opened up. And we might be the first ones into the ground, but that doesn't mean it's not a viable economy. And luckily, my investors see it the same way.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. So for them, it's disintermediation. They look at the carbon market the same way I do, as an opportunity. It's clogged with middlemen. The brokers take 90% of the profits. They sit in New York and add no value. And if I can disintermediate, you know, one large corporate emitter and 1,000 farmers, and I can actually handle those transactions with blockchain, then it's an obvious play for a good investor.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, is the type of investor for your play where it is sustainability based, you know, green or eco-friendly, or like that sort of, you know, narrative, is the type of investor that invests in something like you and what you're doing different to, say, like a Peter Thiel, for instance, who's maybe looking at other types of investments?
Actually, I think they're the same. If you're an educated investor in high tech, then you're looking at different metrics. So I'm in Sputnik ATX, which is one of my favorite incubators in the whole world. Mostly I've been following their blog for like 10 years. And I came because they know a lot about high tech. And actually in my class, I'm the only sustainability project. They're not a sustainability investor. They just look for emerging markets, and they look for disintermediation in emerging markets. They're looking at different metrics. And that's the same thing Peter Thiel looks for. He looks for actual innovation, opening a new market, disintermediation. That's what makes an educated investor, you know, get happy.
Yeah, you put me onto Peter Thiel's Founders Fund website. I'm going to bring it up to for everybody, because this is where you and I like went off piste in a major way.
Where we diverged.
We diverged into deep tech conversation. So maybe we should do that now. So I'm on the website currently, and you basically put me onto this manifesto of Peter Thiel. It's obviously one of the first backers of Facebook. And I read this manifesto, and it talks about these deep tech spaces like aerospace, biotech, AI, energy, internet. I don't know if that means IoT or Web3 necessarily, but it's a fascinating read. And we spoke about this, the value of deep tech. So in other words, you know, what technology really changes the world? And it's a big question, like, what technology really changes the world? And I think there's basically, and why I loved talking to you earlier this week was there's this Web 2 paradigm that everybody's playing in, centralized transactions, you know, fucking Facebook. God, please, no. Can we find a better way? You know, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. These are just distribution channels. It's not where I get any ROI. And so, like, And then you've got Web3, and you touched on it earlier around, blockchain and decentralized peer networks or social networks. We're not quite there yet, and maybe this is where we need to go. So firstly, let's land. What is deep tech from your perspective?
Deep tech is cracking a hard science problem. So like silicon chips are cracking a hard science problem. Quantum computing is cracking a hard science problem. That's like altering the known parameters of our world. So currently I work with two techs, and I'll explain them. One is a 3D metal printer that can print up to 8 feet wide, but also down to 6 microns in diameter. So that just cracks the auto parts industry wide open. Like, why should you ship an auto part when you can print it locally? That's one. The second one is a machine that uses NASA technology to print bricks from dirt. You shovel dirt into the machine and bricks come out. That, I know that sounds a little bit like science fiction, but that's deep tech.
Great. Best answer I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, what are the applications then? Let's stick with Savimbo as the story here. So
Yeah.
you take the printing of bricks from dirt story. Like, how does that really scale? Because, again and again, we hear this idea of, scale. It must scale, otherwise it's not investable. You must have a clearly defined market, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise they won't touch you outside, maybe let's put the team aside. So with something like that, I mean, is that, in your context, is that really scalable? And how do you see the timeline around that being a reality?
We're actually the second buyers of that dirt to brick machine, primarily because when we go into the Amazon and we want to stop people from cutting down trees, it's good if you have an alternative construction method. So this particular machine fits on the back of a pickup truck. So it's very scalable, and they can mass produce them. And then that changes construction and logging and all this stuff in like very remote environments. So they're working with us because if we can run it with indigenous farmers on the Amazon, that's the ultimate marketing play for them. Yeah, it basically proves their scale model. So yeah, that's an example. I think I want to address your other question, which is like having a scalable market for a deep tech. We study diffusion of innovation theory and the Gartner Hive Cycle. So all technology comes like a mobile phone. It comes out of a very high income place, and it's usually pretty finicky at the beginning. It passes through visionaries who like see the future, and they're like, it's so beautiful. And then it usually has some bugs and it doesn't work, and you're like stuck with like, okay, it doesn't quite work yet. We all loved it, but now it's boring. And this is where blockchain's at right now. It's past the visionary future, and then now it's got to make it to main market, which is actual utility. And there's something called the chasm where nobody wants to work on it because it's old, it's no longer brand new, and it's still got bugs. And then there's this long period where all the bugs have to get worked out before it actually starts to yield. And this happens with every technology ever emerging ever. It's a great model to apply. So when you see something like the brick machine, it's still in the techie phase. Like, I'm the visionary talking about it, and it's not going to make it to main market until it's like super robust. But the people who carry it across that chasm is people like me who are visionaries. Like, I'm the one taking this machine to the Amazon, and I'm like, I'm going to make it work no matter what.
Well, this is why I love talking to you. And other people like you, because by the way, funny story. We'll come back to the deep tech story in a moment and crossing the chasm, because I actually had Jeffrey Moore on the show not too long ago, who wrote the book.
Really? I love him. I'm totally going to fangirl. Wow.
Yeah.
He's great.
Do you want to hear a funny story about that? So
yeah,
I'm like super busy, right? And I'm like, crazy day, back-to-back meetings. And I'm like, shit, I got to do a podcast. So it pops up on my little like calendar notification, like, you've got to meet a podcast. But now I'm not really looking at what's going on. So I'm like, shit. And I like turn it on, I get the camera and it's on, put the cameras on, hit play, and up pops Jeffrey Moore. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I didn't even know, like, he was booked. That's how crazy it was. And we spoke about, obviously his book's it's like one of the best technology books ever written.
I use it like a textbook. It's basically just like it's total. I mean, advertising, everything. It tells you exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. I actually need to reread that because, I mean, I'm also in the scale business. So my whole thing now with the Matt Brown Show is really helping startups scale through media platforms and things like that. And you and I had this conversation. So a lot of them are in the seed stage, funnily enough, and they're trying to figure out like what nail to hit. So they haven't quite made a lot of revenue. They're not really at product market fit. They're not quite ready to scale. And then you've got, other guys who have product market fit. They've raised Series B and they want to spend, $200,000 a month on, marketing and content and all that kind of stuff that I specialize in. But a lot of them, like there was this guy, funny enough, I spoke to yesterday. The company's called Zero Systems. His name is called Alex Babin, Russian guy, but based out in California. And he was talking about what they've done with AI and ML to automate enterprise level processes and things like that. And he had a very interesting view on crossing the chasm, and that we were using Tesla as an example. Also, like you could say it's deep tech packaged in a car, an autonomous vehicle, so to speak. And he was like, like when it comes to marketing, people don't get that, that Tesla actually doesn't, they don't spend advertising dollars like you would for Ford or GE or these other manufacturers. They actually use innovation or the technology itself to do the marketing for them. So they take their advertising dollars to invest in R&D so that they can market, quote unquote, their technology to the majority to get across the chasm in the first place. So it's not, to be clear, if you build it, they will come. That's not what it is. And there's, funnily enough, there's a lot of founders I spoke to in the States over the last month or so who believe that. There was one guy that said, I said, what are you going to spend on marketing? He's like, we'll never market ourselves. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how are you supposed to reach the majority? Like, he's like, no, if we just build a great product, then we'll cross the chasm anyway. So I'm like, well, okay, but you're not Tesla, dude. You're not SpaceX. You know what I mean? So
well, if you have a deep tech, people are curious about it.
Yeah.
And curiosity can do a lot of I think a lot of people say viral spread is unpredictable. I don't believe that. I just think most people can't affect it because their product's an optimization product. And so that's a marketing play. But when you have a deep tech, the curiosity kicks in, and you run through the quant channel. I was describing the quant channels, which is like people like me who like talk about like actual innovation or hard science focused. We're all connected and we all talk to each other about actual stuff that can move the dial because we're interested in problems. So we talk about solutions.
So let's get your view then. I mean, how do you get deep tech to be adopted by the majority? Like how much education and
fix the bugs?
Is that it?
That's it. Yeah. Why is everybody not using blockchain right now? Have you gotten a blockchain wallet recently? How usable is that?
No, that's your space.
Sorry. Yeah. Like, I mean, I've gotten 5 or 6 blockchain wallets, and there's like open code. Like, that's just not kind. Like, people, you can cover that stuff up. Put some paint on it, man. It's like trying to sell a building, with open studs on the walls. Like, just do a little bit of paint and some finishing stuff, and people will move right in. They'll be like, this is a great house to live in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but why aren't we using blockchain? I mean, you and I spoke about the death of Web 2 social media and how pointless it is almost being there at all. I mean, you got to pay to build a community, you got to pay to access them. I mean, it's pointless. So Web 3 is all around, a different way of doing things. And, Web 3 for our audience, maybe let's ask you, please explain Web 3 from your perspective for our audience. If they're going like, what is it?
Story.
Okay, go.
I wrote an article on Medium a while ago. It was really mean. I don't know why, but I was doing carbon credits. I wrote a really mean article about medtech, and I thought everybody was going to get mad at me, but the doctors loved it. They loved it. They're total masochists. So 67,000 doctors read this article. 67, and guess how much money Medium paid me for that article?
Wait. Let me guess. Nothing.
0, because I didn't have 100 followers. So I don't know why. Maybe doctors don't like following people, but I mean, maybe they don't like following me because it was kind of mean. But regardless, I got 0 money. So that's a Web 2 play. Basically, some people make a lot of money. I'm sure there's somebody writing on Medium about how to make money on Medium, and they have 10,000 followers and they're making a very good living off of it. But some people who do good work don't get anything, and there's just not equitable. It's not like based on views. And the Medium said the reason that we can't do that is because it costs us too much to transact with you. Like, for us to make you an account and pay you out every month costs us something, and you have to be above a certain level. And I think this above a certain level is kind of ubiquitous throughout Web 2. So just taking a step back, Web 1 is like the static web pages that, I don't know about you, but I had when I was a kid. You go to it and you read your aunt's blog and there's a cat photo and you're like, yay, I saw something. That's Web 1. Web 2 is like interaction. So I'm on Facebook and I'm like putting content in and I'm talking to my friends and it's like doing things with me. Web 3 is that it's doing things with me, but it's like little bits of money going with the things. So I put out a blog. So speaking of, Peter Thiel, our new favorite investor, invested in something called BitDAO, because BitDAO is a real innovation. And BitDAO is a 10,000 person autonomous organization formed using blockchain. I joined BitDAO. I was an ambassador. I put out an article, and every person that read my article gave me 1 cent. I made $10, but only 100 people like read it. It was like, sorry, I'm not doing the math well there, I think, but you get the point.
That's fine. You're making money, dude. You're making money
I
without...
made money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a much smaller like readership, but just getting anything was nice. I didn't expect to get anything out of either article, but like I think the big issue with Web3 and why everybody loves it and why the visionaries love it is this concept of like, we're not going to create a cliff where some people are in and some people are out. Like everybody can have based on what they're doing.
Well, this is the thing, right? I think after you said what makes deep tech adoptable by the early majority, right? Is that you said no, just remove the bugs. I think there's that and the story around it, because I'm going to do a series literally about Web3 just to try and figure out like what do other people think. And I know they're just opinions and that, but I think opinions oftentimes do give you perspective on what's true and what's not, which is, by the way, something you do for pharmaceutical companies trying to figure out like what's factual and what's not on the internet. So, but the story around, I had a guy on this morning as a CEO of BankServe doing a show for them. And they're like a payments infrastructure partner for financial services companies. And we spoke about, what does the future of payments look like in a connected emerging market context? And he didn't want to say the word Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because of the public perception.
So, but it's bullshit. Like I covered, I told you this, but I had covered the cryptocurrency space 2019 when it first ran. And I know it was a tulip bubble, that kind of stuff. But it was incredible for people to start thinking, the majority to start thinking about cryptocurrencies, not necessarily adopting them. And I sympathize with a lot of people who lost money then, but a lot of people made a lot of money too. But it was this unique time in history where people started to really think about the application of the technology, not the early adopters, not the visionaries. They had that, those guys are like 50 Cent, where they're like Bitcoin and bought it or like forgot about it. And then suddenly it was like a thing and he made 50 million US, you know what I mean? Like all those kind of rubbish stories or incredible stories, depending on what your perspective is. My point being, if you can't get the majority to start thinking about it, right, it's not going to happen. And so the way that you start getting them, my experience is, my point of view is, if you start to get the majority and to think about it, you have to have a narrative. And the narrative at that point was get rich. It's the new digital gold, like invest now and you get 100 times your money back, and it's going to be $1 million per coin, in the future. And we all now know that the story around that, you can't get the CEO of a company to say the word Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. And because everyone's like, fraud. Yeah. So the narrative matters. Like even if you have a great product and it's sitting there in isolation, bug free, you still need people to go, oh snap! Like I get it. Like I understand the utility now. And so for me, like that's the missing point of view that a lot of founders don't think about. It's like, well, what's the story here about this thing? Because you're up against it because people like have a lot of choice, and that's also a negative thing when you're trying to scale something, whatever that is, even in the Web3 space.
I think choice is, I always think choice is good. In fact, it's baked into our product that everybody has autonomy. So clients can leave, they can resell their credits. Farmers they have 1 year auto renewing contract and they can leave. They have their own independent land. So I really like this concept of choice. And I think that is one of the appealing things about Web3. is that you can do things collectively, but as an individual, it's kind of a nebulous concept. One of the things that really bothers me about Web3 is I always see Web3 as enabling connections in a more like fluid manner. For instance, if I have 1,000 subsistence farmers and they want to sell to Shell doesn't want to make 1,000 purchases. So blockchain kind of enables these really disparate transactions to occur. But this is about a connection. Like I have a buyer and a seller, and I'm taking it through the blockchain for a purpose. And a lot of people are bringing one or the other to blockchain. They're bringing either buyers or they're bringing sellers, but they're not connecting the two. And I told my friends, so all of our credits are meant to be retired. In other words, at the end of all of our credits, there is a buyer who uses the credit and says, I've sequestered this carbon and it's dead. It burns. It doesn't go any further. And our farmers are not paid in blockchain because they can't use it on the ground. And so any payments that go through blockchain are transferred to fiat for them. So we always think about where is it going in value, where's the value coming out of either end. For us, blockchain, the value is that we can track each individual credit. Johnny's Jaguar goes on all his credits. Like there's a video of his Jaguar in his credits. So that's a blockchain play.
Yeah, I wrestle with that idea, because I'm like, you can get people into crypto, but to get it out and to have it,
that's the problem.
That's
if
the problem.
If it doesn't come out, it's a Ponzi scheme. Like I just told somebody this yesterday. He's like, I'm buying carbon credits on blockchain. I was like, great. Who are you going to sell them to? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, carbon credits only have value if you sell them to somebody who retires them. I was like, are you going to sell them to somebody who's naiver than you? Because that's a Ponzi scheme. I was like, if you sell them to Shell, then that's a market. That's the difference. I was like, is Shell on blockchain? And he was like, oh no, now that I think about it. I was like, well, yeah.
So remember that idea that you and I were talking about? I mean, I had it back in 2019, funny enough. I was like, well, crypto, blockchain, attention, there's obviously basic attention token and various others. And, what if you could, make or get paid to learn, as an example. So to your point, you have MetaMask loaded up in a browser, you had your content there, you're getting paid a cent for consumption or attention. So, and then I'm like, well, if you had you have 1 billion people using that thing, like they've got, all these, let's just say 1 million tokens of X, let's call it the map round show token. I don't know, whatever. What do you do with it? You know what I mean? Like because it's not, if you link it to something like the BitDAO, for instance, it's, USD backed almost or linked. So, so it's, you need to draw it out to transact in the, you know what I mean? Like it
has to pass through the chain. That's the point.
Yeah. So how do you see that being resolved? So if you have, I don't know, okay, let's use basic attention token because that's an actual real thing. Yeah. So let's say you had 1,000 bats.
Yeah.
And it was worth, I don't know, in fiat terms, for very illustrative, hypothetical, $500 or $100, let's say 10%. You need to draw it out. So do you see a world where you're transacting, or maybe it is about NFTs, like you're able to buy things that also exist, like goods and services, digital properties and assets within the metaverse or within, forget the metaverse, just the cryptocurrency type space. You know what I mean? Like maybe you could trade. You could say, well, I'm going to give you 100 of my bats for 10 of your Ethereums. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I know you can do that in a wallet now.
Yeah, you can do that. Blockchain is just a spreadsheet, is how I describe it to people. It's just a spreadsheet, and nobody can lie about what's in the sheet. That's it. What you put in is, first people just put numbers in, and then they were like, let's make money. So they did. But then, you can put numbers in about anything, and you can also put photographs in the sheet now. And you can have a double-sided column with like photographs and art and stuff like that, and numbers. So for us, like our credits, they have a balance of the deposit, and then they have the images of Johnny's Jaguar. That's like in one token. So those can be transacted. The difference is when you add a photograph, it's very unique. And so the value is not, fungible versus not fungible. All this stuff. I don't know if I need to explain it for your audience. Yeah.
Go do it anyway. I'm with you, but do it anyway because I want to keep people along here, because I'm very excited about the Web3 space and what it promises. We may not be there yet, but we will be soon. I think. Well, it's defined soon, you know what I'm saying? So, but maybe walk us through what fungible, non-fungible means. So when we talk about you earning something in the crypto space and you want to spend it on some kind of utility, walk us through that.
Yeah, I guess at the simplest level for our carbon credits, in order for a credit to, so we, like I said, we don't sell them on blockchain. We sell them to direct purchasers. So like either Shell or on this, with CME Group on an international market. So when we sell the credit, it's a standardized unit. So we have a certifying body that comes around and says that is one credit. And what went into making it can be very different. It can be biochar, it can be, the bricks we were talking about, it can be the trees that we grew. Sometimes we have some seagrass. All those things can be used and calculated out how many tons of carbon are actually in that credit. But once it goes to the market, it's interchangeable. So that's a fungible token. What's not fungible is the stuff we put on the credit. So we put all of our data that validates exactly where that credit came from with the credit. So Johnny's Jaguar, his GPS code, his drone scans, that is unique. Each credit comes from a different place. So that's not fungible. And now that we have tokens that can do both sides of that, you can actually make really interesting products, I think.
Yeah. Like years ago, like 15 years ago, I forget this. It was some kind of like a funding platform, almost like a crowdsourcing platform where you could say, listen, I have a project and I'd like you to invest in my project. So it's kind of like was the very early days of crowdfunding, but it was for good. I forget the name of the website now.
I think Indiegogo was the one that had the reputation for, but there's another one now that just does like nonprofits or something. I don't know. There's been a bunch.
Yeah. So my point being is that I posted up a request to help me build a school in an emerging market, because if you could, I think it's like education is a big thing for me. I know it is for you and a lot of the quant community as well, the students. We can get into education now in a moment. But my point being is that there was a group of us who wanted to make a difference. And we wanted to build a school. Well, the idea was, well, help me build a school that we can go and visit. And it was like, it was something cheap. It was like $5,000 or whatever to literally build a school that would last for 10 years, that would put kids through this, this building essentially, and, would really make a difference. I'm thinking that, the idea and the promise of Web3 is really, I would suggest, not only capitalistic in some sense, because there always will be that. Human greed is a real thing. But you can actually contribute to an idea. So if you were to, let's just say, in your case even, it's about the bricks. So why I'm doing this in the crypto space is because I can contribute along with 10 other people to 1,000 bricks, and that brick or those bricks will contribute this difference in the world. Do you know what I mean? So it's less about, well, what can I spend it on, like shoes, clothing, food, and all this sort of thing. But it's actually about, well, together, collectively, these tokens, these credits that you describe, will be spent like this through this team. In this case, your founding team and your other partners. So, do you see that being the kind of short-term play, and maybe the
critical thing here is your token tied to a real-world asset, product, service, something? Like, I think somebody's putting my time out as an NFT out of Dubai. So like 1 hour of my consulting time is now an NFT, but that's a real thing. Like, and there's my video, there's my bio, like it's real. And so when you tie the token to something real, which is why we take the time to put all of these photos and videos on our carbon credit, because it's evidence that that carbon credit is representing something real. And a lot of people are selling tokens that have no intrinsic value other than our emotions or, marketing behind them. And so when I look at Web3, I always look for what's real behind it and have they proven it? And blockchain can prove that. So it's not that hard to get that. Like, we're putting blockchain telemetry developed out of ClimateDAO through some of our 3D printing machines, because we can tie the blockchain to the 3D print head, and we actually know the exact volume that was printed. So that's like what blockchain should be doing.
Yeah, and it's funny how early adopters with something truly disruptive and impactful like blockchain and crypto always tend to focus on self-enrichment.
That was like the dot-com boom. I mean, if you look at the history of Web 2, it had the same pattern. So it's called the Gartner Hive Cycle. Yeah, it goes inflated expectations, and then it bottoms, and they're like, this is technology is no good, and then that's when it starts to yield. So actually, my interest in blockchain actually comes from the fact that it's on its way down from inflated expectations, which means that it's about to become useful to me. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring this up. So so if you guys are listening on the audio version of this, go to my YouTube channel to pick this up. So can you walk us through this Hive cycle? So I've brought it up on screen for everybody. So you have this massive like exponential uptick called the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and then it upticks again to slope of enlightenment, and then the plateau of productivity. Walk us through these stages, and where are we when it comes to Web3 from your perspective?
Web3 is bottoming. It's definitely on the downslope. Luna Crash was kind of like the beginning of it. And I think personally as a builder, it's probably got a ways to go before it hits rock bottom. Right now, the public disillusionment with it, and Gartner actually puts out their own analysis of each technology on the market. So you can Google the Gartner Hive Cycle blockchain this year, and they'll tell you where they think it's at. They're better analysts than I am, but as a technologist, yeah, I think it's still bottoming. So
yeah,
now's not the time to sell if you're holding. Just wait it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. I spoke to two founders. One was Alex Babin, who works directly with Gartner and AI, the link being there, deep tech. And then another one, or Web3 technology, one could even argue. And then the other one was a company out in Cali, also coming on the show, amazing founder called Dynam.ai, who is also working with Gartner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's what's the narrative here? What do we need to know about the relationship to research Gartner being one of those firms and like deep tech founders?
I would definitely say that if you want to be a technologist, and I use that word very precisely, because a technologist is somebody who is specialized in the emergence of technology globally, across the world and across history. And they understand those patterns. The only two things a technologist needs to operate is the Gartner Hype Cycle and diffusion of innovation theory. And if you apply those, you know where every tech is at, what every tech needs, and where every tech is headed. It's really obvious.
Diffusion of innovation theory. See, I told you you were way smarter than me. So
well, that's the chasm. That's Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore.
is that what it is?
I think he coined that. So diffusion of innovation theory and crossing the chasm are the same thing. He kind of popularized it. But and then that's that theory, and then the Gartner Hype Cycle. And you can see, so for instance, blockchain right now, it came out after machine learning, and it's going through the cycle a little bit after machine learning. So machine learning already bottomed and it's coming back out. Now it's starting to yield. People are like, we know what it's good for. It's got a lot of the bugs worked out. We know when to apply it. And now it's starting to make money and bring real world value and make it to the main market. So they're kind of like overlaid patterns.
They are diffusion of innovation model. I wasn't even aware of the term. Just goes to show. I had the guy on my show. You know what I mean? So read the book, people. Don't just listen to the podcast.
Well, I still think the book is way better than you can read the theory. I think I read an article about it for doctors, because for doctors, the chasm in diffusion of innovation theory is about 80 years, which is horrible.
What?
But that's the reality. Yeah, it's that Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. They're very, very risk averse. I don't know if I should say that's good or bad, but like, for instance, laparoscopic surgery was about, I think it was 70 years. Penicillin was 50 years. Yeah, that's a really long chasm for a technology.
No, let's hope that doesn't remain to be the case.
Yeah.
But it's like Moore's law also, right? Like what technology doubles every 2 years or something like that. And that was also disproved, wasn't it? Well, recently.
Yeah, I think it's going faster, right? Is it faster?
Yeah. It's like it was the number of transistors that could be on a microprocessor would double every 2 years, and it's actually now. You're looking at quantum computing now, which is like.
I'm so interested in that. That's like deep tech right now. That hasn't made it out of the technology, because I haven't got my hands on one.
Oh, really?
And I keep looking for somebody who works on one, so I just want to nerd out about it.
Yeah,
I actually joined this quantum physics group just so that they would talk to me about quantum computing. That's how nerdy I am. And I did it like on a Friday night. Like that's bad, right? You know that you're a nerd when you do that on a Friday night.
Yeah, no, that is true. Well, look, I'll send you a quantum computing little unit to your home address after the show. Okay, don't worry
Thank
about it.
you.
I got
Thank
your
you.
back. I got your back. You know
No, here's what I heard. Oh wait, no, this is just rumor. I should, yeah,
what?
you actually
Do
watched
it.
my thing. Okay, I'm
Do
gonna
it.
start a rumor. This is just totally a rumor. I have no idea if it's true or not. But somebody told me that in Google, when they were using their quantum computer, it started getting this like dust on it, and they were like, "Why is the dust on the quantum computer?" And then they kept brushing it away, and then they realized it was like a brand new substance that had never been made before, which I am so curious about. I need to read up on this.
A new substance.
Yeah.
What do you think
Sorry.
that could be?
Well, they said it had something. It was like I don't know. Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
even know. That's why
Well,
I'm so curious.
I know, right? So let's you and I will call it quantum dust with a capital Q and a capital D. That's our
QD.
thing.
Yeah,
QD.
that could be your first module for like
I know, right?
educational, right?
I know, I know, I
Yeah.
know, I know. So, what excites you about quantum computing then?
I think so. So I should backtrack a little bit. My consulting agency does high tech for hard science. We have about 300 people I call delinquent savants. So they're high IQ people solving hard. I think I said this already.
No, you
Yeah.
missed that piece.
Yeah, solving hard scientific and social problems. So it's a lot of geniuses, and we pretty much cover like most of the emerging tech. We know about just about everything. We don't know the details necessarily, but we kind of know the trends and what's out there. So when I hear about something totally new, I get super excited because I'm like, wow, this is if it's actually new, then I haven't heard about it before, and it has yet to be explored.
Well, I'm curious about that too. The more I talk to deep tech founders in the US, like the more I'm kind of orientating that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
it's
there's a
fun.
lot of there's so in the US there's so in Africa there's 99 startups that have raised capital in the last 12 months.
Wow.
In America there's 12,000, over 12,000, just over. So and then
Yeah.
so I mean, but how many of those are deep tech startups?
Um, I don't know, like I have seen some amazing founders coming out of, what's interesting about the US? I think if you talk about the US as if it's only people born in the US, that's very naive because if you go to innovation hubs in the US, they're very international. In fact, one of the most international environments I've ever seen in the world. I think Dubai is very international. I haven't been to Singapore, but like Silicon Valley, where I'm at in Austin, there's people from every country. So a lot of these founders come to the US to get funding.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. So when we were looking for houses, this is because the American dream is a thing that everyone has heard, I'm sure, at some point in their life. So people are like, "Oh, it's dead. The American dream's over," and so we're like, "No, no, no. Like, I believe the American dream is very real." But the only thing I didn't have was like coalface experience, so like on the ground. The idea of the American dream is like you can come from anywhere in the world, come to America, and build a dream any dream. Like that's how it be. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger being a case in point, and so when I got here, my wife and I were running around looking for properties, and I shit you not, like I'm so encouraged about this idea of the American dream because when I mean like I didn't really appreciate like how much of America has been built with immigrants. I know there's a lot of information out there and people like they kind of heard it before but they don't really get it. So like in Denver where I'm at, we looked at like let's just say 10 houses. 9 of them were owned by immigrants and they didn't own one, they owned multiple properties. There was one lady who was from Russia. She was a masseuse. A masseuse gets paid like $150 an hour. So it's not like top 1%, earners, which you need to earn 440,000 US a year. So she owns 4 properties, 4, as a masseuse. Now, in South Africa, you can never do that. You can't do that. So it's not possible economically. You're never going to get there. You're not. But in America, it's possible. So to your point, I'm not surprised, like what you said around like, going to these incubators or just, I mean, by the way, I've spoken to 30 different founders over the last sort of week or so. Like I would say 70% of them are immigrants.
Yeah, we at our agency, in order to get genius, we just look for genius. We don't care what it looks like. Like somebody the other day was like, who do you want to hire? Do you want to hire somebody who's good at tech? Okay, you're looking for a young person. And I was like, no, wait, back that up. I was like, I'm looking for somebody who's good at tech. I don't care what age they are. Yeah. And because you don't know where people are going to come from. We just hired somebody who's in their 70s who's like really, really amazing. So I think that we ended up very diverse, a lot faster and a lot more diverse than other workplaces. Like, I'll give you an example. During Black Lives Matter, I was simultaneously working with a white policeman from Texas and a Black activist from Oakland. And they were working together. We had people, we had one surgeon from the town Osama bin Laden was captured in, and then somebody who was Hasidic Jewish from Argentina. So I think a lot of environments, when they talk about diversity, they don't actually have it. And so they don't have to deal with it internally. And when you have internal diversity, it's a totally different problem. It's a good problem, but it's a different problem. And you see this in big innovation hubs in the US. People are in the room together who have entirely contradictory beliefs. And the only way that works is if you're very respectful. And basically what you say is, I don't have to share your belief to respect your ability to hold it. And I think that's a core value that occurs in the US that makes it possible for these people to come from anywhere and participate and share information. And I've traveled all over the world. And as somebody who grew up in the US, you always have critiques of your own country. And I've traveled a lot and I've seen better models on many things. But one of the things I do love about this country is the ability to hold diversity in the same room and accept it. Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more. So unfortunately, I've got to go chat to another founder literally in a few minutes. So let's wrap this up. We'll have to get you back and get more into deep tech at some point in the future. But why do you do what you do? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I'm obsessed with this idea that we live in a world now where you don't have to do good or make a profit. Like I can both make a profit and do really good things. And I think the Patagonia founder just proved that, like, what was it, yesterday? Retired and left like $3 billion to environment. Like he made a lot of money and didn't even want to. And I think me being a businessman has been a side effect of my desire to be effective in my altruism.
Yeah, it's
businesswoman.
Yeah, isn't it funny how like people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all these guys like made billions and like gave like most of it away, and then Matthew McConaughey said, Jim Carrey, he was like, if like everyone could achieve their dreams and all the wealth that everybody wants, they want to be rich one day, all that kind of stuff, they would realize that that's not actually what it's about. So it is actually about so much more. It's about meaning and the struggle in the pursuit of something, in the pursuit of an ideal, a Web3 world, a universal basic income, and in your case, carbon credits that actually mean something. So
I just want to go hang out with Johnny's Jaguar.
I know, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to in November. So I think for me, this was the pursuit of natural beauty, and this has been a side effect of that.
Amazing. Drea, it's been a privilege and honor telling your story.
So much fun, always.
Awesome. Speak to you soon. Ciao, guys. Thanks for tuning in.